We're going to start in League Two, looking at the surprise result of the weekend, certainly in terms of bookmaker odds, and certainly in terms of the scoreline. Crewe 0, Newport 3. This is a Newport side that a couple of weeks ago I picked to finish in the bottom two in our mid-season predictions, who had been on a horrendous run of form. One of those runs of form that didn't just look like getting a little unlucky in tight games. It looked more like, where's the next win going to come from? And they've squeezed out 3 in a row. Here, Antwi, the midfielder, smashed home following a corner that Crewe didn't clear properly. Then they went 2-0 up when the speedy, nippy David Ajiboye sped in behind, nipped in front of the goalkeeper who'd rushed out and didn't get there and slotted into an empty net. And then, to make things worse for Crewe fans, Courtney Baker-Richardson comes and scores against his old club and looks very happy to do so. And all of a sudden, Newport have won 3 games in a row. They're 13 points clear of relegation now. I sort of no real idea where this has come from, to be honest with you. But Nelson Jardim did make a change of shape a couple of games ago, and so I think we can probably flag that as a reason for improvement. 3 at the back now, as is often the case when teams are just trying to stay up and need to keep a few more clean sheets. Cameron Evans as the right centre-back, James Clark as the central centre-back, and Matt Baker as the left centre-back, it tends to be. Anthony Driscoll-Glenn in the left wing-back, and Thomas, who got a really nice assist here, the right wing-back, and then Antwi and McLaughlin playing in midfield at the moment, and the front 3 of Ajiboye, Baker-Richardson and Bobby Camwer. That is a front 3 that if you can provide a solid enough platform and keep zeros and ones, there's quality and speed and skill there. And with Baker Richardson in particular, finally fit and being able to start games for them, with Ajiboye having come in January and hit the ground running really nicely, it's looking good for them at the moment. And, I am now not worried about Newport County's relegation, which is exciting because the project overall I am excited about. I want them to stay up for the next year or two in order to see what they might be like in 2 or 3 seasons. The nature of their recruitment and the way they're trying to rebuild under this ownership of Hugh Jenkins rather than fan ownership. It is interesting to me, and I want to be able to see the fruits of it. Getting relegated to the National League will make that more difficult. So a huge win for them. As for Crewe, I mean, some concerning recent performances, and then the results have kind of started to line up with that. It's jarring watching Crewe play without Mickey Demetriou, because when they do play with Mickey Demetriou, it's so clear that he's their strongest penalty box defender and their leader. He was missing here, and it's the first time they conceded more than 2 goals in a league game since the second game of the season. Probably not a coincidence. But I noticed the drop in performance levels in home games, which is probably even more worrying, when they beat Carlisle 3-2. And I probably didn't think much of it because they then beat Bromley and Morecambe and drew with Swindon in their next 3, so it didn't seem like there was a huge issue. But then since then, they've lost at home to Aki, they drew with Wimbledon when clearly second best, they drew at Harrogate, and now this 3-0 kind of headline defeat, if you like, to Newport. They're now outside the playoffs, and they've got quite a lot to think about, I think it's fair to say, Lee Bell and Crewe. But it's fair to say they've been written off plenty over the last few seasons and stepped up to the plate. So let's see if they can do that with still plenty of points to play for and not far outside the playoffs at all. Walsall. George Ellick, Colchester 2, Walsall 1.
Yeah, for Walsall to take the lead in this game, having come back from 2-0 down against Salford to draw that game 2-2, it kind of felt like their mini wobble was coming to an end against a Colchester side who we have to say are in incredibly good form. And that form dates back to, if you go back to November the 9th, in the league they had, I think, 11 games unbeaten in League 2. They then lost back-to-back games against Swindon and Accrington at the turn of the year, but since then it's 4 wins and a draw in their last 5. You've often said to keep your eye on Colchester, and those who have kept their eye on Colchester have had to watch them move steadily up the table. And this was another really good performance from them, where having gone 1-0 down to that Laken goal, Walsall feel frustrated they weren't able to clear the ball before Bishop finished to make it 1-1. And then a brilliant goal from Owura Edwards, cutting in off the left-hand side onto his right foot and firing into the top right-hand corner. A player who's obviously got that in his locker, who we don't necessarily see do it that often, but was a bit of a ray of light in this game, in what was a relatively drab affair, and the moment of quality that turned the game in Colchester's favour. They are, struggling at the moment, Walsall. The good news, I think, for Walsall fans and those of us who are sitting on 20-1 title betting slips is that I think, and this might be famous last words, but I think their fixtures coming up look to me to be opportunities to get themselves out of this funk. They have back-to-back home games against Gillingham, who are really struggling at the moment in League Two, and then Chesterfield, who, despite that 5-2 win over Doncaster midweek last weekend, aren't necessarily the best on the road and have struggled a little bit in certain games so far this season. And those are followed up with trips to Morecambe and Cheltenham, who are down towards the bottom end of the table, Swindon, Carlisle, Grimsby, Bromley, Gillingham again. Effectively, also got a lot of games coming up in the next few weeks against teams who are currently in the bottom half. And if they are to bounce back to form, which you anticipate they probably should do because of the quality they've got and the esteem that we hold Matt Sadler in, and this was by no means a really poor performance. And it is worth remembering as well that the 3 defeats in their last 4 games have all come away from home, and they've got a lot of home games to come. I think they might be okay, and Colchester definitely a side who are currently operating as one of the better teams in the league. So frustration for Walsall, they weren't able to carry on from that comeback in against Salford, but another big performance, big win from Colchester, and a moment of quality from Edwards.
There was a hell of a game on Thursday night between Chesterfield and Doncaster Rovers, which Chesterfield won 5-2. I mean, defending and goalkeeping purely optional. Thursday night football in League Two, and attacking players just filling their boots. Quite helpful, really, because Chesterfield have almost a new look front line. Start of the season, I remember writing about Markandé and Dobra and Berry and Will Grigg up top, and now it's Ola Kigbe and Dobra and Dylan Duffy and Bim Pebble up top. And all 3 of the new boys scored. Pebble scoring 2, Ola Kigbe with a nice goal, Duffy with a nice goal too, made easy because the goalkeeper slipped on the floor and he was just able to slip it past him. Honestly, the highlights of this game are so good. You've got to go and watch them. The coup de grace was that Donny made it 4-2, and you think maybe, given how crazy this game is, and the fact that they had twice as many shots as Chesterfield, almost twice as many shots inside the box, had been going toe to toe with them, you thought maybe Donny could come flying back. And from kickoff, the ball was played back and the Doncaster defender slipped on the floor. Ollie Banks ran clear and dinked it over the keeper with a little scoop and made it 5-2. And that just, for the neutral anyway, added to a sense of fun, which I'm not sure Donny fans were feeling. The good news is they play Palace on Monday night in the FA Cup, so there's a chance for them to forget this quite quickly and maybe add their name to the list of great FA Cup upsets as the lowest ranked team left in the competition. That ended their run of what had been 4 wins in a row before then for Chesterfield. They've just got to build again with this very new look team after a lot of January activity, and try and rebuild a playoff push. They're 6 points off it at the moment with a game in hand. There's loads of quality in the team. There's an insane amount of promotion history within the team because they've got about 10 players 31 and over, including the likes of McFadzean that they signed, Donatian that they signed, but they need to put together a run, and I certainly wouldn't back against them doing that under a manager in Paul Cook who's got a history of it. But equally, the work needs to be done. The results need to be got. They are off it at the moment by 6 points. It's been a great week, or couple of weeks really, for Notts County, George. They beat Morecambe by 2-0 on Saturday.
Yeah, and they finally got there. It was a good performance, you have to say, from Morecambe. This was not a team at the top end of the table up against a team in the relegation zone and one-way traffic throughout. Morecambe played their part within this game. And eventually, Notts County's quality shone through. Disappointing to see Jody Jones taken off injured after 25 minutes. Really hoping that's not another serious injury, having just paddled his way back in. I saw he Instagrammed.
He insted.
I'm not on Instagram, but I did see that.
Well, it's worth saying, because people might not have seen it, he insted saying it's not a serious injury. So yeah, that's good.
Fingers crossed that he's back very soon.
And it was nice to see in his place, we got to see a bit of Jarvo, Will Jarvis, not the tedious pitch invader of various different sports, but actually quite fun, quite direct, quite skillful,
that would have been a
wide player who helped set up the first goal for another new boy in Whittaker. Yeah,
a really good finish from Whittaker as well. As you say, a good assist from Jarvis before Jatta poked the ball in from close range in the second half to make it 2-0. No hint of an own goal whatsoever there.
Don't bring up the own goal thing.
It wasn't an own goal. It was Jatta's goal.
Why can you not just focus on the 50 yards of work he did before then? Which is much more prime Jatta.
Yes, he did do well. In order to get to where he was, in order to prod the ball home himself.
You know what? I was just talking about John Akinde's goals from back in the day. Jatta is a prime purveyor of the Akinde special. He turns, especially for a team that plays so many short passes, the regularity with which he turns Alex Bass long balls upfield into goals is, or at least good chances, is absolutely astounding.
Yeah, no, it is, and he's. I think they've done well to keep him, and I think they will have to get promoted this season if they are to keep him. And at the moment, they look the most likely to get promoted alongside Walsall. They are trucking along really well, and if Walsall aren't going to pick up the points or aren't going to pick up their form, then it's not County a best place to come and usurp them. Just 6 points behind them now, albeit I think Walsall have a game in hand. And this was a good performance. Again, for Morecambe, I still maintain that Morecambe are very much in this, and that people shouldn't write them off. Their performance levels are still pretty good. The betting market still seems to kind of write them off as no hopers, but I'm not entirely sure that's the case.
Yeah, I just feel like every single time I watch Morecambe lose, something like this happens. Hitting the post at 0-0, 2 inches one way, and they go ahead. At 1-0 down, Dackers with a huge chance, really poorly taken. It's just like, come on. Can you catch something can you catch some finishing in a bottle for a period of 4 or 5 games? Because if so, the results will look different. I think we should both continue to maintain that, even if it may never come to pass. Because if it never comes to pass, Morecambe will drop out of the Football League, and then we won't talk about them any Mondays.
7 of their next 10 are at home.
Oh, Bradford are having a hell of a time at the moment as well, beating Harrogate Town by 1-0. A Anthony Sarcevic crashing back post header, a cross from Bobby Poynton, another strong display from Alex Patterson, all the guys that we spoke about on FOTMob Corner a couple of weeks ago. Now, at 1-0, there were a couple of Harrogate chances to equalise, not taken, and then in fairness, a couple of chances for Bradford to extend their lead, not taken. 1-0 probably the correct result overall. And for Bradford, it's just a great response to defeat at Wimbledon. Last time out in the league, they beat Rotherham to reach the semis of the trophy in midweek. They've won 8 out of 11 in the league and 7 home league wins in a row. That is so significant for a team that has had or had this home hoodoo for a number of years now, and it's so exciting, and they are right bang in the automatic promotion picture, and we've got a really good automatic promotion picture right now with Walsall now 6 points behind, not 6 points behind Walsall, Donny a point behind Notts, having played a game more, Bradford 2 points behind Donny, having played the same game as Notts, 1 less than Donny, Wimbledon and Port Vale just a point behind Bradford, and then Salford and Crewe a point behind those teams. So still this top 8 looking really exciting. Grimsby are the team beneath that. They're 3 points behind Crewe. They did themselves a favour beating Carlisle by 2-1. Sam Lavelle had put Carlisle ahead in their first game under new manager Mark Hughes. Sam Lavelle has scored 24% of all of Carlisle's league goals in their last 24 league games, which, fair play to him. They've really needed him to throw his head and body at every set piece, and it's been one of their major goal threats. They had a big chance when they were 1-0 up. Hugill sliding in a ball across, he missed it by an inch or so, and they were made to pay. Justin Obikwu scoring the equaliser for Grimsby, the sort of goal that someone of Justin Obikwu's frame and skill set, when he scores that sort of goal, you think, yes, that is really impressive, to receive the ball back to goal inside the box, to hold off a defender, to get a shot off on the turn and find the net. I'd like him to do more of that, because we know that he can do that. It's just a case of how often and how consistently. And then the winner was a penalty from Danny Rose. Was it a penalty? Yes, I think it was. I saw a reverse angle on socials from the stand. Svan Thorsen looking trickier than he has done previously, with some great skill to draw a foul. He really stood out on the highlights, which I think is really exciting for Grimsby fans as well. The Icelander, and it's a big win for them. But we got to talk about Mark Sparky Hughes, George. Can he provide it for Carlisle, do you have faith that they will get better under Mark Hughes?
Not really. I think they might do. I wouldn't necessarily be overly convinced that they will. I think there's probably quite a nice succession in terms of, I think Mark Hughes will want and need technically gifted footballers in order to execute the way that he wants to play football. He may not have, when he was a Premier League manager, been perceived as some kind of purist in terms of playing style, but certainly a lot of the criticism from Bradford fans during his tenure was his absolute, he was so wedded to playing possession-based football to a fault, and that frustrated Bradford fans who didn't really feel like their squad necessarily suited that style of play. Given that Mike Williamson has played a pretty big role in building their squad over the last month or so, which is effectively a new squad, you would think that that's going to suit at League 2 level the players he has at his disposal. And we also know, Ali, don't make this mistake, the Carlisle pitch is a carpet.
Great
Beautiful pitch.
Award-winning.
Beautiful pitch. So that should be conducive to him having a good time. But it's kind of hard for me to work out how we're suddenly here. Like how Mark Hughes seemingly deciding 3 or 4 years ago to take a job in League 2, presumably because he saw the potential that Bradford had. And he quite liked the idea of probably being the biggest fish at a club, doing what he liked and taking a bit of a sleeping giant back up to where it belongs. He failed to do that. And now, is he suddenly now just a League 2 manager? Like, is that how things, a guy that managed Man City, he managed Wales. Is this just because this is the pool that he has to fish in now and he's not going to get anything else if he wants to manage this where he has to be? When there's next to no evidence he's a very good League 2 manager at this stage. Like the jobs that he did in the past, he never played at this level. He's not someone who knows the leagues particularly well, I wouldn't have thought. He did okay at Bradford for a time. He took them to the playoffs. They probably should have been in the playoffs. And then he left at a time where the majority of the fan base had lost faith in him. I assume he'll come in and carry an air of gravitas and probably command respect relatively early. Probably saw some great volleys and training. But I'm not necessarily convinced that he's going to come in and make them a whole lot better straight away. Maybe he will. I mean, the thing is, the squad is quite clearly good enough. There are certain clubs where often it doesn't seem to matter what happens. Despite having good players, they always underachieve, and Carlisle kind of feels like that right now. But he should have the tools at his disposal to improve them. But something feels very, very broken there. And I kind of struggle to think that it was all Paul Simpson, and then it was all Mike Williamson. And now another manager's going to make all the difference.
Yeah, we're also in a position at Tranmere Rovers where things feel broken. That is often the case when a team is dropping towards the bottom two and panic is setting in. The owners released a statement last week. They are trying to stop panic setting in by putting their full support in Nigel Adkins and writing a letter to the fans explaining why they want to do that. It's interesting that they have written as part of it, evidence suggests that changing your manager in the middle of the season and in these months doesn't always have the impact that people, or often doesn't have the impact that people kind of want and expect, which, I think broadly is an idea that you and I can kind of agree with, while also having loads of examples at the moment of teams backing that trend.
It's just not a blanket rule though. Like, it's just, you have to assess the squad that you have. And if you believe that the squad is better than the performances are, then there is something wrong somewhere. And the idea that, actually, if you look at it statistically, changing manager doesn't always yield results, that in itself isn't a reason not to sack your manager. Otherwise, you might as well just sit with some guy forever and just see what happens. If
statistically, mate, in the last 50 years, when a manager has spent over 25 years managing an English club, they've won Champions League titles, statistically, 100% of the time. So probably... But let's not be flippant. They lost at Salford. It's their 9th away defeat in the league in a row. Tell me about it.
Yeah, Salford needed this after that incredible winning run. They were winless in a few. They'd been 2-0 up at Walsall and had been pegged back to 2-0. To 2-2 last time out. They were winless in 5. So I think it's significant for them to get this result. Hakeem Delican scoring both goals. The first kind of fell to him on the left-hand side and he finished. The second one was his own doing, but a similar finish into the near corner. And they deserved it. They were the better side. The first half was a poor spectacle with very little kind of going on within it. But in the second half, Salford were able to turn the screw and make their dominance count. So they get back to winning ways, resume their attempt to break into League One, either via the playoffs or automatic, which automatic probably feels a little bit fanciful now after that poor run. Yeah, but Tranmere, at the moment, Tranmere's best hope is seemingly just that Carlisle and Morecambe don't sort themselves out and pick up more points, because they are floundering right now. And there seems, commend Mark Palios for his open lines of communication. He's, I think, very, very clearly somebody who has his heart in the right place and tries to do well by Tranmere. But I just struggle to understand the idea that things are going as badly as they are, and they don't think anything has to change in order to ensure that their performances and results change, because that's what needs to happen. So what do? The January transfer window is just closed. Do you feel like you've done enough in the window? Probably not. There were, 3 players, 2 of which were young loans?
Yeah, I mean,
Atkins and Palos are obviously good mates, and I just wonder if that is playing quite a big part of this.
Yeah, and I think the other sort of storyline to bring in here, because I think it possibly is having an impact, is that they are trying to sell the club. And in the same statement, he wrote that the proposed takeover of the club continues to progress, and that they're targeting having all the revised paperwork in with the EFL by the end of February. So could that be playing a part if you're going through a sale of a club and you're about to give it over to someone else? Might you think changing a manager would be the wrong thing to do? Maybe not what they want you to do. I don't know, but it is. I mean, it's no tonic or soothing balm to the fans who are watching this incredibly poor team playing incredibly poorly and getting more and more frustrated. You could probably say the same for MK Dons, watching a poor team playing poorly and getting more and more frustrated, because this clearly wasn't meant to happen. They lost 1-0 at home to Bromley, and this was not a shock result, and it certainly wasn't a smash and grab. And I think those two facts are pretty significant in summing up where both teams are at the moment. Bromley missed a penalty, or rather Cheek had one saved brilliantly by McGill. Cheek doing that penalty that he always does, where he goes sort of middle of the goal, straight down the middle, lifting it ideally above the goalkeeper's diving legs. In this case, McGill managed to get his foot up and put it over the bar. McGill made a couple of great saves in this game. Almost all of the major chances were Bromley's. And in the end, Imre, the right wing back on loan from Palace, as he has done so many times this season, just rinsed the defender, fired it across for a Ben Thompson tap-in. Bromley are just a good team. I'm struggling to find major weaknesses. I think they have an impressive temperament and ability to win tight games, which is a normal characteristic of a team that's won promotion the year before and kept broadly the same core. The challenge for them, which I'm really excited to cover, will be how they do in the next season or two. The example of Sutton is obviously fresh in the mind. Another, club, South London club, who came up, kind of above all or against all the odds, punching above their weight, did really well in the first season, almost made the playoffs but not quite, and then found it quite difficult to maintain the momentum. But I just think it's cool. Like the start of the season with Bromley on the pod in particular, it was all about Cheeky up front, wasn't it? How many goals he'd scored in a full career, never made it to this level, hit the ground running, and is one of the top scorers in the league. But when I watch the team now, I don't really notice Cheeky, because I've noticed Cameron Congreve on loan from Swansea, who scored a great goal against Newcastle in the Cup, and that just seems to have given him so much confidence. He looks excellent. I noticed Danny Imre on loan from Palace, and maybe there's an issue that these two players are both loanees that they will have to replace next season. Ben Thompson was a brilliant signing, which was always going to be a brilliant signing for Bromley, and he's been brilliant for them. And at the back there, they have a number of good players and just a solid unit. So, I thought it was quite punchy that they brought in 7 in January, Bromley. You kind of think of continuity as a bit of a theme of clubs like this when they're thriving. But maybe Woodman is clearly an ambitious guy, is saying, look, let's not rest on our laurels and then find out the hard way like Sutton did that you can't do that forever. Let's try and grow even when the current crop is still producing good crop, something like that. MK though,
good crop, bad crop.
There's not a lot new to say about this MK team at the moment that we haven't said in previous weeks, that they have all the openness and defensive lack of steel as both Scott Lindsay's Crawley team from last season, who conceded an insane amount of shots and goals for a promotion team. But unlike the Crawley team, they don't counterbalance it with any of the attacking verve or the confidence on the ball or the nice patterns of play that Lindsay's Crawley team had. So they have to find that from somewhere. Otherwise, this season is going to end with some incredibly bad vibes. Obviously, that nothing too dramatic. They're not going to get relegated if they make a decision now to just stick with Lindsay and see it through, and try and turn it all over again in the summer. Then I don't think that's the worst approach ever. But they've still got loads of games to play, and the way that they're playing is so poor at the moment. You're going to tell me about Barrow 3, Gillingham 0. Yeah,
really big win this for Barrow, and an impressive one too. The goal of the day, one of the goals of the day in League 2 came from Kean Spence with the opener here, a brilliant strike in the top right-hand corner. He scored the first two in this one, but Gillingham again just kind of rolled over. I think we expected to see something from John Coleman since coming into the club, replacing Mark Bonner, like some kind of change or an improvement, but again, maybe this is one where Mark Palace will be saying, "Oh, well, look at this! They changed manager, nothing's happened," and it's true because the performances, if anything, are maybe getting worse. They were well beaten here, by far and away the weaker side of the two, barely registering anything in terms of attacking threat throughout the whole game. Spence with the first two, and then Tyler Smith making the point safe late on in the 95th minute to make it 3-0. Really good for Andy Wing. Another impressive home performance from the new Barrow manager, who's settling into life as an EFL manager really impressively. And Gillingham have to be a bit careful. They're on 32 points, which at the moment is quite far clear of the bottom two. But the way they're playing and the lack of wins and the lack of any promise in their performance, if they don't start winning points soon, they could be one of these sides who look like they're nowhere near a relegation scrap in December, January time, who suddenly, when it comes to the end of February, early March, realise that they're in one. And right now the performance levels suggest that they very much could be if they don't improve.
You never want to be the team that doesn't realise they're in a relegation scrap until the last 4 or 5 games of the season, do you? You really don't want to be that team. Now, tell me about Fleetwood 2, Cheltenham 0. Your boys, Fleetwood, getting a good win here and making this Colchester versus Fleetwood, Maxwell Stance versus Ellick Stance battle all the more intriguing, because we now have Colchester in 11th on 40, having played 29, Fleetwood in 12th on 39, having played 28, +5 and +4 goal differences. Who will finish higher? I can't wait to find out.
Fleetwood. I mean, they're such a weird team. Like, how weird is this? In their last 6 games, Fleetwood have beaten Salford, MK Dons, Walsall and Cheltenham, and they won 3 of those 2-0, one of them 2-1, relatively comfortable in all of them. They've played the two teams who are favourites to get relegated, in Carlisle at home and Morecambe away from home, and they've been beaten by both. Make it make sense. I don't really understand it. Again, here against Cheltenham, they were by far the better team. Really, really strong throughout. They limited Cheltenham to very, very little. They created plenty of opportunities themselves. Matthew Virtue scored the opener before Helm made it 2-0 late on from a one-on-one. They restricted Cheltenham to very little. Could see Louis Marsh playing for Fleetwood, who could be the striker to come in with Coughlin's injury to replace him and score some goals on loan from Sheffield United, a player that's regarded very highly. I think that the likelihood is that Fleetwood will make this their norm, will make this their regular performance, I think. I can't quite put my finger on how and why the aberrations happened against the two weakest teams in the league, but every time I kind of give up on them, they put in a performance like this again, where I'm like, yes, do this every week and you're probably a top 7 side.
I love how you said make it make sense, because I think that could actually be the slogan of League 2 each week. I think if we start building out proper slogans for all 3 of the EFL divisions, make it make sense works quite well. Swindon 3, Port Vale 3 was a brilliant game with some great goals, some terrible defending, everything you want to see really, especially Cotterell's strike from range into the top corner. Swindon goalkeeper Bycroft making a huge save at the end, which is dripping in narrative because on deadline day, Port Vale's former number 1, Connor Ripley, who's been ousted by Ben Amos, joined Swindon, and I wish he'd played in this game, but unsurprisingly, gentleman's agreement, we get to sign Connor Ripley, but he's not allowed to play on Saturday. And Bycroft, who, frankly, between him and the other keeper, Swindon keeper Barden, neither of them have done enough to really earn the gloves. And I do think Ripley represents a huge upgrade, as I expect it, in goal for Swindon. But he did make that massive save at the end, having conceded 3 other goals in the game. So that's an interesting wrinkle of Swindon. And I wonder if this is one of those games where both sides might be a little bit disappointed with the result and the way that it went. and might both feel like it was 2 points dropped, but fantastic fare. Accrington 0, Wimbledon 0, very much a match that happened. There's a couple of EFL games in midweek, and we'll be back on Wednesday on ntt20.com to recap all the midweek fixtures on Under the Lights. That is only for paid subscribers, so why not sign up at ntt20.com today? We'll also be back in the second half of the week with, you'll never guess what, a betting show, and I can't wait for it. Thanks and go well.